I would like to introduce you just in quick. So you're a senior developer advocate for Amazon Web Services, speaker, author, and several books that you wrote. Can you introduce a bit more about your story and how did it start?
Yeah, so I'm by trade a web and mobile developer. I just now started getting into the advocacy or the evangelism, and I think it kind of ties in really closely to me with what I like to do because I'm already really interested in speaking. I'm interested in writing. I'm interested in kind of creating content, but I'm also interested in creating things with code. So putting all that together kind of fits that role pretty good.
That's so awesome. And so when we talk about front-end development and full-stack development at the moment, how do you see actually the future of full-stack development at the moment?
That's definitely one of the things I'm really interested in. And I think that in the past, full-stack development meant you had to understand everything on the back end and everything on the front end. And on the back end, that got pretty hairy. It got pretty complicated, understanding how to create and manage servers, how to deal with databases, APIs, all that stuff. On the front end, it wasn't so bad. I think what we're seeing now is kind of a shift. It's becoming more complex on the front end and less complex on the back end. Not saying that building things on the back end is becoming easier, but there are now more abstractions that you can leverage using cloud technologies like some of the stuff that we're working on, but also some of the stuff that's just out there in general. Microsoft, Google, of course, have their clouds. And then there's a lot of startups and companies that are building serverless technologies that are kind of making the back-end part easier. So I think what we're seeing is traditionally front-end developers becoming full-stack developers, not in the traditional sense of them being able to build full-stack applications in the old way, but in the new way.
I see. Your presentation today was quite about the demo, and you just made it live to us. Can you give us some brief about this presentation?
Yeah, so the idea came from another project that I open sourced a few months ago called Conference App in a Box. And what it basically was taking an idea for an app that people build over and over and over again, but there's really no need to keep building the same app over and over, a conference app, and trying to package it up into something that could be reused and dynamic at the same time. So when you think of WordPress, the reason that WordPress became so popular, was so widespread, and people are still using it, is because within just a few minutes you can deploy the database, the client, the server, all of the different pieces that need to have to kind of build something good. I think what we're seeing now with some of these newer technologies is the ability to kind of do that, but maybe using more modern technologies. So Conference App in a Box was the conference version of that, conference app version of that. It did really well. I've interacted and worked with over 30 people that are using it for their events, and I've had hundreds and even thousands of people downloading it and using it to build their own app. So what the idea was after that was, what if we could rebuild something like WordPress using this same idea? So I spent the last few months building something called Jamstack CMS, and it's built using modern technologies like Gatsby, server-side rendering, React on the front end, and on the back end, it's using managed identity services, it's using Lambda functions, it's using GraphQL, and I packaged everything into a single repository that can be deployed from the command line in just a few minutes. So what you end up with is, just like with WordPress where you have all of these things deployed just within a few minutes, you can now do that, and again, in what I think is like the future modern way. I don't think Jamstack CMS will become what WordPress is, but I think what it will become is, in my opinion, kind of laying the groundwork for the future things that we're going to see, and people hopefully will take the idea and run with it and maybe build something even better. We'll see.
That sounds really amazing. I think that's a big problem to solve. So we see that ourselves as well. So when you build this, it's actually deployable. It's easy. You pull it and then you deploy it to your server, and it's working now.
Yeah. So for the version I have now, it's a beta version. You need to have an AWS account, and you have to just have that account. And then if you have that, you can deploy it. And it goes into your account. The back end kind of goes, does everything under the hood. You don't really have to do anything. You just have to run, I think, 3 command line commands, and then everything is ready to go. It launches also the front end. I think for version 1, in 6 months or so, when we finally get to that V1, we're out of beta, I would like to have it configurable with other cloud services. So
Mm-hmm.
people might want to use Netlify, they might want to use Google Cloud or Azure. I want to find if there's a way to make it pluggable, and that way we're not limiting to only AWS customers.
Nice open source project.
Yeah, that's what open source.
Okay.
You know?
When we talking about your technology, that your domains going on, how do you see at the moment adoption? How quick it is to adopt those technologies, and what can it help as a developer usability perspective?
So it depends on the tech, but what you're seeing is few technologies are becoming very, very popular, and a lot of technologies are not catching on. So there are a few things that you see that have gotten really popular and become really useful. So people that have adopted GraphQL or React or Vue early have gotten paid, off because of that call or that investment in time. But during the process of us seeing like Vue and all these things come out, there have been thousands or tens of thousands of other things that we don't really see or aware of. I think being able to kind of like identify what's going to be hot and what's going to be useful is a very good skill to have, and I think it's something that you just kind of learn over time. But I think there's a few ways to kind of do that. Just the company driving the project a lot of times will determine its success, or the person. And this is unfortunate because sometimes the best things are not the ones that catch on, because people may not have a reach or an audience, or they may not be a big company or an influencer, so no one sees what they've done, whereas something that might not be as good does get that traction. But what you do end up seeing happen is, even if that does happen, the community comes in, if it's open source, and makes it better. So just being able to identify the things that are kind of becoming popular and riding that wave is important.
Okay. If you can give us some hints on the latest 3 to 5 tools that you would recommend for new coming full stack developers, what would be those tools?
So, of course, I'm very biased because I work at AWS and I really enjoy the stuff that I work on. So I'm going to just say, other than Amplify and AppSync, which are the things that I really like and that I work on, I think Auth0 has been around for a while, but it's still very, very good and gaining a lot of momentum. It's very similar to what we have at Amazon, called Amazon Cognito. Netlify is obviously becoming really popular. We have Amplify Console. It's very, very similar. I think anything in the serverless paradigm is something that's going to be catching on, and something I would keep an eye on. Also, anything that increases developer velocity and developer efficiency. So to me, that's like cross-platform frameworks. Flutter and React Native continue to improve and become better and better. Ionic is actually just released a web version, and I think that's going to do really well because the web platform is becoming better and better, and the ease of use with Ionic is much easier than with React Native or Flutter. So the average web developer can start building mobile apps pretty quickly. I think Ionic is something I would also keep an eye on.
Oh, thank you. So what tools do you recommend, or what do you see which helps to improve developer velocity and team work together?
So what I've really been excited about, and a lot of other people are too, again, falls into this serverless paradigm. And when you talk about serverless, it doesn't mean just serverless functions or functions as a service. It's more about abstractions over managing your own service or managing your own thing. So functions as a service falls into this category of as a service. So anything that you could fall into a category of as a service falls into something that would improve developer velocity, improve developer efficiency, because therefore the developer doesn't have to implement this thing. They can use something that someone else has already built that's probably better than what they're going to build anyway, and then they can worry about focusing on the business value of whatever they're trying to build. So what that basically means for AWS is we have something like Amazon Cognito, which is a managed identity service. So instead of building out your authentication layer, you can just hook into an existing one, and it's free for up to 50,000 users. So most of the time, if you're building something, you're not going to be charged for it anyway. If it does really well, you start paying, which is kind of like the whole point. You want your thing to do well. And then you think of what about the data layer, which is extremely important. What we've really focused on is around enabling developers to kind of be able to build and deploy different APIs quickly and test them out, and then be able to tear them down if they don't want to use them. So we have something called AWS AppSync, which integrated with AWS Amplify allows you to deploy GraphQL APIs that are managed GraphQL APIs. So you spin up the API, you don't have to worry about maintaining it or dealing with anything. It's kind of like there, and you can throw as much traffic at it to it as you want. It stays up and running, and you can again kind of focus on building the app and not worry about handling the infrastructure. And I think anything that allows you to do that, not deal with the infrastructure is really good. So for us, that's Amplify and AppSync. That's Amazon Cognito. That's DynamoDB, which is the serverless database. S3 is something everyone has been using for years. That falls into that category, managed storage service.
Okay. What sort of challenges do you see as a full stack developer most of the time? So there's a really nice idea, nice example, which I always wanted to ask. So what can you do with those droplets or those servers which you forget to tear down or something like that? Do you have any solution for that? Or how can you prevent that you burn so much money on Amazon?
Yeah, I mean, you just have to understand, that when you put something up, it's going to be there and you're going to be charged for it. But again, that kind of pushes people towards serverless because unless you're using it, you're not going to be charged for it when you're using a serverless service. Whereas with your EC2 or DigitalOcean Droplet or whatever other actual server instance, you have to pay that every month, even if you never touch it. But if you spin up 1,000 Lambda functions and never use them, you actually don't get charged for anything. So I would say try to move away from things that cost you money when you're not using it.
So serverless.
Serverless, yeah.
That's a solution. Okay.
That's, I mean, not for everything, but for most things, yeah.
Okay. I'm happy.
In my opinion, that's just my opinion.
Okay. Have you had any major drawbacks in your last projects that you would give as a hint, or what you learned that you would give out to the community to solve?
Yeah, totally. I mean, we mentioned Jamstack CMS earlier that I released today, and it came down to the last few minutes or the last hour or two before I went on stage to release it because I had assumed I would have this week in prod to kind of like finish the app, and I had a few small things that I thought wouldn't take very long. But if you've ever built a piece of software, the last 10% usually takes 90% of the time, and that's the case this time. So I ended up spending like most of last night up trying to fix a bug, a couple of other polish I needed to do before I could release this app. But if anyone wants to help out, it's an open source project, Jamstack CMS. Definitely check it out and contribute to it. And I would just recommend that people, if they're building something big and that's a very large, ambitious project, just like take it one day at a time, build things. Don't try to really, like I did, set a date when you want to release something because it kind of sometimes will, I don't know, maybe push you a little too hard, but release it whenever you're ready to release it. There's no rush.
It's good to hear that we are all still humans,
yes.
even on a level that you are playing on. So how do you see now the current community? So community development is quite strong in Europe, in the US as well, what I see at the moment. How do you see, how hard is to attract the right talent at the moment?
That's a tough thing that's happening right now. I mean, I think it's just a very, very complicated and hard thing to solve. I mean, if you wanted to kind of lay it out, though, in a simple manner, it comes down to the culture, and it comes down to, the location sometimes, or the option to work remotely. I think what you're seeing, though, is kind of like the people that are winning, the best developers, have really awesome people working there, and it makes me want to go work with those people. So how do you attract those first good people? I don't really know the answer to that, but maybe just having a really good culture, maybe throwing a lot of money at an influencer and bringing them on, and then having those people. That's, no one has said that they've done that, but I mean, I've seen, in my opinion, what people have done that. It's not a bad idea, actually. I also think that, offering a lot of money, doesn't hurt, and these are things that you have to really have a good company with a lot of money to be able to do. So it's kind of tough for startups these days, I think. I don't know. I think the one opportunity that a lot of people don't utilize that they could is working remote, allowing remote people, because I've seen companies hire the best people in the world that would have never come to work with them if it wasn't for remote, but they're getting them because they're offering the remote opportunity. So if you're hiring someone that's 3 times X of a good of a developer, possibly as this other person. Let them work remote. They're still going to actually do more work and get more accomplished, and everyone's going to be better off for it.
Do you see organizations which are working really great with remote devs, or what techniques do you see inside those companies? Because you do a lot of advocacy, so probably you saw a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the best teams that I've seen are Infinite Red, I've seen Gatsby, and I've seen Netlify. I think all 3 of those companies are really, showing what can be done with an open culture of allowing people to be remote. I don't really know exactly, the ins and outs of what they've done, but they are very, they just have awesome people working there. I think when you have awesome people working there, everything just kind of like is easier and you attract better people. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
How do you like Reactive Conf 2019?
Wow. So I didn't know what to expect because I've never been here before. And I always hear about Reactive Conf. So this is my first time to be able to come. And I've probably been to like literally 50 conferences. So didn't know what to expect. But I mean, I'm actually blown away about how good this conference is. It's probably one of the best conferences I've been to just because everything is so well done. The food was really, really good. The conference venue is really nice. Everything is just really well done. And Prague is a beautiful city. I think having all that stuff put together just makes it for a really great event. And I hope I get to come back again next year.
Also as well.
Yeah.